Discover the amazing bond, how 7 lives were transformed by a tiny kitten saving a horse from a forgotten past. Ruth had always believed in the power of education, shaping the futures of countless children in Maplewood. Yet, as she stood alone in her barn on that crisp autumn morning, the once vibrant dreams she had nurtured felt like fading leaves beneath her feet. The loss of her husband lingered like an unwelcomed guest, a reminder of the joys and responsibilities now resting solely on her weary shoulders. When she stumbled upon a shivering, abandoned kitten nestled in the corner, Ruth felt an unexpected rush of compassionate urgency. The tiny creature, frail and alone, mirrored her own heart, both yearning for connection and a purpose in a world seemingly devoid of promise. But as she took the kitten in her care, naming him Whiskers, a sense of unease clouded her joy. Could she truly dedicate herself to nurturing yet another life, after her husband's absence loomed like a heavy fog? Questions swirled in her mind, a whirlwind of conflicting thoughts and emotions as she tended to his needs. Was it right to open her heart again, risking yet another loss? What if nurturing this small creature led her deeper into a world of disappointment? Doubt tightened its grip around her throat, choking the hope that flickered within. As the days passed, Whiskers flourished under her loving hand, but his unexpected bond with a neglected horse named Daisy, tethered behind a crumbling old family home, pulled at Ruth's heartstrings in ways she couldn't easily explain. The sight of Daisy, once a creature of beauty and grace, now reduced to a skeletal form of her former self, twisted something deep inside Ruth. The horse's deteriorating condition reflected the struggles of their community, a town that seemed forever teetering on the brink of decay. But would reaching out to help a broken horse lead to ripples of change, or would she face rejection from a community too steeped in apathy, too haunted by their own failures? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As Ruth grappled with these dilemmas, tension coiled tighter around her heart. Thoughts of Mark, the once promising veterinarian now swallowed by isolation, haunted her. Could she reach him? Could he possibly believe in hope again? Or had the failures of the past chained him to despair? Every attempt to connect was met with a wall of skepticism. Disappointment threatened to suffocate her resolve, like the dust that settled on the forgotten corners of her hometown. As she now considered the neglected horse, Ruth felt herself standing at a precipice, filled with uncertainty. Her love for the kitten pushed her forward, yet her doubts dragged her back. She faced the daunting question: could she open her heart to help both Whiskers and Daisy and stir the slumbering townsfolk from their apathy? The air around her thickened with unspoken fears as her decisions weighed down like a barrel on her back. What if she was risking everything for nothing? The sun dipped lower in the sky, sending elongated shadows creeping into the barn as despair loomed like an approaching storm. Just then, a loud crash echoed from behind the barn, a shocking reminder that life could spiral out of control at any moment. Ruth's heart hammered as she turned, uncertain of what the next moment would reveal, bracing herself for the unknown. Ruth's breath caught in her throat as she pivoted toward the source of the noise. The sound of wood splintering and metal clattering echoed across the barnyard, filling the space with an eerie tension. Fear coursed through her, mixing with a surge of determination. Was it the wind, playfully threatening her fragile sense of control, or something more sinister? She paced towards the barn's back door, each step echoing with the weight of her escalating worries. Outside, the late afternoon sun cast a surreal glow, and the scene that greeted her eyes left her momentarily stunned. A toppled feed barrel lay strewn across the ground, its contents spilled like secrets whispered carelessly in the night. And there, chewing on the discarded remnants, stood a startled Daisy, her large dark eyes wide with confusion. An unexpected wave of relief flooded Ruth. The horse wasn't hurt, just grazing like she owned the place. But as she knelt to collect the scattered feed, Ruth's heart felt heavy with more than just the stress of the day. "Why did you have to scare me like that?" she whispered to Daisy, unable to mask an edge of frustration. Emotions rattled in her chest: anger, worry, and the acute realization that the horse needed her just as much as Whiskers did. Instinctively, she reached out to stroke the dirty coat of her equine burden, feeling the knots of tension tighten beneath her fingers. That connection, a silent understanding between them, was a seed planted deep in her heart, urging her forward into the chaos of her own fears. Was it possible to mend not just one life, but perhaps two? The thought simmered uncomfortably, a blend of possibility and despair. Could she take on the responsibility for both a kitten and a horse? Questions whirled in her mind, but more than that, a stirring of resolve began to flicker. "Come on, Daisy," she said, coaxing the horse gently. "Let's get you cleaned up." It was a simple task, yet it felt monumental. As she collected her tools, Ruth noticed the way Whiskers was already moving closer to the horse, as if sensing the need for companionship. Maybe this wasn't just about nurturing either creature. Maybe it was about awakening a community that needed to remember how to care. As she tended to Daisy, brushing the dirt from her coat and checking her weight, a new plan formed in Ruth's mind. She couldn't save the whole town, but she might be able to impact one life at a time. Maybe Mark would see the horseshoe print of hope if he were drawn back into the light, caught in the persistence of care and revitalization that she envisioned. Yet, as the evening approached, each comforting stroke she gave Daisy ushered in a creeping doubt. Did she have the strength to bridge the gap with Mark? Could he ever be coaxed out of his self-imposed exile? A sound behind her stirred her. The neighborhood kids had gathered, curious about the unfolding scene. "Hey, Miss Ruth, what happened?" one of them called out, a glint of uncertainty mixed with interest in his eyes. The moment was before her, the opportunity to engage not just the children but perhaps even Mark. Ruth's decisions loomed heavy with consequence in the fading light. She could feel the pull of the past battling against her yearning for a transformed future. With a deep breath, she turned to face them all. "Want to help?" she asked, her voice strong despite the churning chaos within her. She felt the stirrings of courage, an unfamiliar but welcome weight on her shoulders. The faces lit up as they nodded, and she felt the gears of change starting to turn. But beneath her initial determination lingered a nagging worry. Was she merely delaying the inevitable? As the children enthusiastically moved closer, Ruth caught sight of Mark standing at the barn far off, shadowed and watchful, uncertainty etched on his features. For the first time in months, he seemed intrigued. The time had come to face not only her doubts, but also the walls she had built around her heart to see if she could begin to tear them down. Could she provide the care that both Daisy and Mark deeply needed? Ruth's heart raced as she prepared for the impossible task ahead, balancing hope against faded memories. The stakes were rising, and she knew this journey was just beginning. Ruth's pulse quickened, her heart hammering in her chest as she stood before the eager children. Their bright faces were a splash of color against the fading light, an unexpected buoy in the tide of her uncertainty. Taking a deep breath, she felt the heaviness of doubt easing, if only slightly. She was not only a caretaker of animals, but perhaps a guide for these young souls. "All right, team," she said, galvanizing her courage with each word. "Let's tidy this up. Daisy needs our help, and so does our barn." The kids scampered forward, laughter mingling with the crisp evening air, transforming the tense atmosphere into one filled with energy and purpose. As they worked, Ruth found herself stepping back from the chaos. She observed the children teaming up to clean the area, some trying to coax Whiskers away from the feed, while others tended to Daisy's coat. Each interaction was layered with innocence and earnestness, the kind of caring she had almost forgotten existed beyond her immediate worries. Watching them brought a rare smile to her face, the warmth spreading through her, momentarily dislodging the chill of her insecurities. But in the corner of her eye, Mark remained a constant presence, a dark silhouette against the warm hues of sunset. She sensed his struggle without needing to know the details. It was mirrored in her own, an internal battle to reconnect with a part of oneself left adrift. The distance between them felt suffocating. Why couldn't she simply call out, draw him in? One of the children approached Ruth, hands outstretched, a small pile of dirt clumps in their palm. "Miss Ruth, "Do you think if we clean up the barn, it'll help Daisy feel better?" They looked up at her with hopeful eyes. Ruth knelt beside them, considering the simple suggestion. "Yes, I think it will. It's important for all of us, Daisy, Whiskers, and even us, to feel clean and cared for." In that moment, the metaphor unraveled in her mind. Wasn't she also in need of a good washing, of brushing off the dirt that clung to her spirit? The weight of responsibility didn't just weigh on her shoulders, it anchored her. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting an orange glow, she felt a grounding sensation wash over her, a sense of clarity. She could approach her relationship with Mark in the same way. She didn't need to have all the answers, just a willingness to take one small step, much like these children were doing. She could facilitate that process, extend the kindness she so desired in her heart. "Okay, everyone," Ruth clapped her hands to gather attention. "How about we set up a little snack station after we clean? We can celebrate our hard work with some apples for the horses and lemonade for us." The cheers erupted around her, spurring her on. Even in the simplest things, she could forge connections. But as they continued to tidy, her resolve began to tremble. Would introducing this light-hearted atmosphere truly bridge the gap to Mark? Could she really lure him out from the shadows? Or was she just perpetuating another cycle of disappointment? It was becoming increasingly clear that the evening was a pivotal moment for her, one where courage and discomfort could either unite or unravel her intentions. Mark's eyes caught hers for just a heartbeat, and there it was, a flicker of recognition, perhaps even an opening. But was it enough? She longed for clarity, to cast aside her fears of inadequacy. Ruth's breath caught again, but this time, it was not purely fear. It was the exhilarating rush of possibility. Step by step, both she and the children could brave the unknowns, their efforts a beacon of hope. She could no longer ignore the truth. Someone needed to initiate contact. Resting her hands on her hips, Ruth made a new decision. She would not only gather the children, but also gather her own willpower, ready to confront Mark and whatever lingering shadows of the past loomed between them. In that moment of resolve, she felt the weight of her journey shifting. As the laughter and the sounds of brushing settled into a comforting rhythm, Ruth turned toward Mark, her heart pounding with anticipation. The stakes were heightened beyond mere animal care now. They were about to care for something much deeper. Could she finally break the silence? Would he take a step forward when she took that leap? As the moment loomed, Ruth wondered if this would be the turning point, where everything she had been striving for would finally ignite into action. Ruth's heart raced as she navigated through the jubilant chaos surrounding her. Children laughed, their voices raising a ruckus as the barn transformed from a place of neglect into one of renewed purpose. Yet, her mind remained tethered to the looming figure of Mark, his presence a magnetic pull she couldn't ignore. Everything felt amplified, each small movement from the children contrasting sharply with the weight of uncertainty that pressed heavily on her shoulders. As they cleaned, Ruth seized the opportunities presented around her. She engaged willingly, bending to help one child, lifting another onto her hip to playfully imitate a horse. Each interaction rekindled a flicker of her old self, the version of Ruth who stood unflinchingly in front of a crowd, resplendent with warmth and charisma. But as laughter mingled with the sound of shoveling and brushing, she found herself seeking solace in those old memories rather than crafting new ones with Mark. In a rare, quiet moment, one of the children paused to peer upwards at her, their expression inquisitive. "Miss Ruth, do you have a best friend?" The innocent question struck Ruth like a bolt. It hadn't even occurred to her how secluded she had become over the months, barricaded by fear and regret. "Well," she began, picking her words with care, "I think building friendships takes time and effort, doesn't it?" In her mind, the words seemed to echo louder than intended, as if they were meant for her, rather than the child before her. With a sudden flash of insight, she recognized that it was also true for her relationship with Mark. An intricate blend of vulnerability and courage, a dance she had been reluctant to join. Determined, Ruth soldiered on, rallying the children into a calamitous yet spirited snack time. The aroma of lemonade and fresh apples told in the air, wrapping around her like a safety net. As they munched, her thoughts wandered to Mark. She felt a longing swell within her, the kind that inspired boldness, but that same anxiety shadowed her every thought. What if she ruined the moment? What if he only saw her as a fleeting glimpse of someone he once knew? With the last bite of apple swallowed, she knew something had to shift. The children dispersed into chatter, their laughter a soft veil over her internal turbulence. Drawing a deep breath, Ruth stepped closer to Mark, who stood still, his back against the barn's rustic walls, virtually camouflaged in the dusk. He looked absorbed in the scene unfolding, yet somehow, still detached. "Hey," she ventured softly, unsure if her voice would betray her. Mark turned slightly, his eyes lifting to meet hers, a crack in his poised facade. "I thought the kids could use some help with the horses." She frowned slightly at the uneasiness of her own invitation, realizing how mundane it sounded. He regarded her for a long moment, and something shifted in the air between them, an unspoken acknowledgement of the walls they had each built. "Yeah, I can help with that." That was it. A small victory, yet monumental. It felt like a bridge, albeit fragile, beginning to form. As they began working side by side, she noticed subtle changes in his demeanor. He moved closer, his hands busy tending to one of the horses. The distance between them seemed to shrink with every shared focus on the task at hand. Still, she wrestled internally with her thoughts. How could she nurture this flicker of connection into a conflagration? "Mark," she said carefully, weighing each word, "what do you think about starting fresh? With everything?" As the words left her lips, she felt exposed, her heart bearing the weight of that simple yet profound invitation. Mark hesitated, the shadows deepening across his features. "Fresh is a tough place to start, Ruth." His tone was laden with unvoiced history, punctuating the gravity of their shared past. "Maybe it doesn't have to be," she replied, feeling a determination swell within as she witnessed the glimmer of fragility in his stance. Their paths had diverged for too long, but perhaps, together, they could find a new direction. Suddenly, a shrill laugh from a child pierced through her anxiety, and Ruth's heart raced with the need to act. "Want to help me be the horse whisperer?" she offered, trying to grasp at lightness again, subtly invoking hope, a reminder that they could navigate through this together. As Mark's gaze flickered to her, something irrevocable stirred beneath their surface of gentleness and uncertainty. Each moment was charged with history, potential, and the burgeoning possibility of renewal. Yet doubt still clenched at her, refusing to relinquish its hold. Would they truly be able to push through this? Could they dare to turn a clean slate into something genuine? As they continued to work side by side, securing the bonds between emotional and physical realms, Ruth felt that today was merely the first page of a new chapter. But beneath the surface, a chilling thought crept in. What if the decision to dive into this unknown would only lead her into deeper waters of despair? As she glanced at Mark again, she recognized that this was the moment for clarity. For clarity would demand both action and courage. Could she face this uncertainty head-on? The thought reverberated in her mind, waiting, always waiting for an answer. But the future remained shrouded in thick mist. The weight of her choices loomed like an inevitable storm on the horizon. Ruth's hands worked instinctively as she brushed the horse's coat, each stroke seeming to soften the tension that enveloped her thoughts. The rhythmic motion absorbed her, but a chaotic mixture of anticipation and intimidation stifled her resolve. Mark was right next to her, his leg almost brushing against hers. She desperately wanted to break through the palpable distance, but every word felt like a precarious gamble. "How's she doing?" Mark asked, glancing up at the horse whose name was Daisy, a fitting companion for the glistening sun and billowing clouds surrounding them. "She's getting better. I think she enjoys the attention," Ruth replied, her voice steadier than she felt. The response felt safe, yet it tugged at her. Safety was no longer sufficient. Connection was the goal, a tether she sought not only with Mark but within herself. As they continued to groom and check Daisy, Ruth could feel Mark shift, his willingness to engage with her growing stronger. But just as she thought the tension was breaking, an unexpected silence prevailed, stretching the moment thin. The underlying doubt surged, gnawing at her confidence. What if their shared silence opened too deep a chasm? "Ruth," Mark began, and her stomach nodded with expectation. I appreciate you reaching out. That's big. It was just an idea, she deflected, her heart quickening. She turned her focus to a small patch of dirt on Daisy's coat, unwilling to meet Mark's eyes. But you put it out there. That takes courage. His tone lowered, laced with something she couldn't pinpoint. Was it vulnerability, concern, or something even deeper? The compliment washed over her, leaving a warm light in its wake. Maybe it was more than chivalry. Perhaps he recognized her struggle as she had recognized his. The thought sent a jolt through her. Hadn't she learned through the children's innocent questions and the echoes of her laughter that relationships flourished with honesty? Mark, we both know we can't keep avoiding the past. If we really want this to work, there are things we need to address, she said, surprising herself with her newfound boldness. Her pulse raced as the weight of her statement settled between them. He turned fully towards her, the uncertainty in his eyes a mirror of her own. You mean everything before we drifted, she interrupted softly, afraid of the truth yet yearning to unleash it. It's about understanding where we came from so we can determine where we want to go. A flicker of emotion shifted across Mark's face, and for an instant, vulnerability danced in the space between tension and hope. Yet darkness lingered just beneath the surface. Those moments weren't easy, he muttered, looking down at the ground, grappling with unflattering memories. Nothing worth having ever is, Ruth countered, ready to challenge his thoughts, her determination flaring brighter. We must confront this, otherwise we're bound to repeat it. As the silence hung thick with shared history, she recognized this as a pivotal moment, an opportunity to delve deeper into their connection or retract into the comfort of familiarity. She felt the weight of decisions forming a path under their feet, choices that could beckon a brighter future or plunge them back into despair. Daisy's still here and she needs us, just like we need to coexist with our past, Ruth urged, feeling the essence of her former courage surfacing, that version of herself who had always inspired others. But self-doubt threatened to bury it again. Mark's gaze hardened before softening, and his resolve appeared to shift. So this is about not just trying to keep things together, but building something real? A spark ignited in Ruth's chest. Perhaps they were both ready to lay bare their vulnerabilities. Yes, she breathed, a tremor of hope threading through her words. But what I need to know, Mark, is if you're willing to journey with me through this uncertainty. He nodded, but shadows still clouded his expression. I've avoided the storm for so long, Ruth. What if I can't face what's truly at stake? The question hung heavily, one that could change everything between them or unravel any threads of renewal they had started to weave together. What if the risk offers the freedom we both crave, she countered, heart racing as the closing tremor of courage coursed through her. As they stood there, facing the vast unknown together, the sunlight paused, shaping a hesitant promise that only they recognized. But as that promise glimmered in the distance, a sudden thought pierced through the moment. What if their pasts were shadows they could never escape? Ruth's resolve wavered momentarily, uncertain but determined. Suddenly, a loud neigh from the barn disrupted the silence, pulling them back from the precipice of deep reflection and doubt. Let's see what's going on, Mark suggested, breaking free from the intensity of the moment. But as Ruth followed, she couldn't shake the notion that the storm wasn't just outside. It waited in the very fabric of their beginnings, and they would have to face its fury sooner or later. Would they emerge resilient or irrevocably broken? Only time could unveil the truth of their journey. Ruth stepped into the barn, a wave of cool air rushing past her as she entered the familiar space of hay and tools, each corner holding memories stitched into her past. The commotion from the stalls drew her attention, and her heart quickened. She felt a tangle of emotions, the thrill of a sudden challenge and an inkling of anxiety about the unresolved moment with Mark lingering behind her. Mark followed closely, and together they approached the source of the ruckus. A young foal had somehow found its way out of its stall, prancing about in an innocent yet chaotic frenzy. Ruth felt her muscles tense. The sight stirred something within her. There was a time when she would have felt overwhelmed, clenching her fists as uncertainty gripped her thrumming heart. Today, though, there was determination. Let's guide him back, We can coax him with treats, Mark suggested, tilting his head and looking at Ruth with eager curiosity. This was the moment that would define them. She could feel it. Ruth nodded, steeling herself. She couldn't ignore the parallels. The foal's wildness mirrored her need for growth and connection. They needed to harness his energy instead of letting it dictate the situation. "I'll grab some carrots," she said, searching for the element that could entice the foal back to safety. As she scampered to the feed area, Ruth felt the familiar stir of fear and excitement. She rummaged through the cool metal bins, aware that her health and determination were like pieces of a puzzle finding their place after years of trying to fit into the wrong picture. With a handful of crisp carrots, she turned to see Mark crouched low, extending a hand toward the foal, his posture relaxed, yet purposeful. "Easy now," he spoke softly, coaxing the creature closer. The foal's wild eyes scanned the area, but Mark's calm demeanor seemed to create a tether of safety. Watching him, Ruth sensed a shift within herself, a recognition of shared goals and strengths, rather than unresolved tension. "Here, little one," she called, slowly inching forward and extending a carrot. The foal hesitated, nostrils flaring, but then took a tentative step closer. "How are you doing this?" Mark asked, an eyebrow raised in genuine astonishment. "You seem different." Ruth paused, the foal now nibbling the offering from her hand. "I guess I'm learning to trust myself again," she replied, feeling the weight of her words shift something deep inside her. "Just like with Daisy, we have to balance trust and courage. It's okay to be afraid, but we can't let that fear paralyze us. It can fuel us instead." Mark's expression softened, and for a fraction of a moment, a connection flared between them, a unity found in mutual vulnerability. They stood shoulder to shoulder, hands reaching out toward this tiny life who needed them both to find its way home. "Maybe we can take this as a sign," Mark said, glancing sideways at her. "If we can help guide him back, maybe we can find our own way too." The foal's nibbling grew bolder, a sign of trust blooming in the delicate space they created. Ruth's heart raced. She recognized this moment as a manifestation of their conversation outside. She was shedding the layers of doubt, reevaluating her capabilities not only as a caretaker of horses, but also as a person ready to mend fractured connections. "Mark, facing the past is daunting, but helping this foal reminds me that we can not only survive, we can thrive after hardship," she pressed, the emotions surging within her like a tide, each wave revealing something new, a determination to build, to trust, to accept the challenges. Mark nodded, the weight of his past seeming to lighten as they continued encouraging the foal to step closer to his stall. Ruth felt lighter, her internal storm dissipating in the face of action. They were forging a new understanding, unearthing latent strengths. Her focus sharpened as she willed the foal toward safety. Then it hit her. She was ready to face whatever awaited her, to confront the fears that had simmered beneath the surface for too long. They would chase down the uncertainties that threatened to keep them stuck, much like the foal running free yet lost. Suddenly, another burst of noise disrupted her thoughts. The large barn door swung open, and an unexpected figure appeared. Someone from her past, a reminder of unfinished business. What they saw next would command their bravery as never before. "Ruth," the voice called. And in that moment, the fragile bonds she had begun to form with Mark hung delicately in the balance. Would they hold strong, or would the weight of the past threaten their burgeoning connection? The moment hung in the air, a suspended heartbeat filled with a mix of recognition and trepidation. Ruth's gaze darted to the entrance, where a familiar silhouette stood outlined against the bright light spilling into the barn. Jess, her old mentor from the riding school, stepped forward. With each step he took, a ripple of memories surged within her, moments of laughter coded in lessons from a time she'd thought she had left behind. "Ruth, it's been a while," Jess said, his voice steady, yet laced with an unshakable familiarity. Despite the warmth in his tone, Ruth felt a pang of uncertainty gnawing at her. The years had reshaped them, but the ghosts of their shared history hung heavily between them. "I didn't expect to see you here," she managed, her words caught between surprise and a flood of pent-up emotions. With Mark lingering beside her, The contrast between her past and present felt stark. Would he witness her vulnerabilities overlaid with Jess's authoritative presence? "I'm back to check on the horses," Jess replied, his eyes casually scanning the barn. But there was a probing quality in his gaze that made Ruth instinctively defensive. The walls she had just begun to dismantle felt like they were creeping back into place. Mark shifted, sensing the tension hang thick and unresolved. "You've gotten quite good with the foals," Jess added. Ruth noted how genuine appreciation twinkled in his otherwise observant eyes. She felt a flicker of pride swell within her, but it was quickly engulfed by the weight of his past criticism, the perception she could never quite shake. "I've learned a lot since then," she replied, meeting his gaze firmly. It was a challenge, a silent proclamation that she wouldn't retreat into the shadow of old associations. "Are you still planning to compete?" Jess inquired, an edge of skepticism threading through the query. It was as a reminder of the dream she once had bolstered by misguided expectations. Ruth felt Mark shift slightly closer to her, an unspoken support fueling the resolve she fought to uphold. "I'm working on it," she replied, the words thick with uncertainty. The aching memories of past failures began to surface, yet for once, she felt the grounding voice within her whisper against the tide of doubt. "Working on what?" Mark piped up, his curiosity bridging the widening gap around them. Jess's appraisal turned, momentarily focusing on Mark, his demeanor shifting from mentor to a cautious observer of a budding partnership. "Horse competitions," Ruth clarified, her voice unwavering. "It's something I put on hold." "Good to see you're still ambitious," Jess said, his tone softening slightly. But just as quickly as he had retreated from the edge, he reasserted himself, eyes narrowing. "You were always so tentative about it, Ruth. There's still time to make choices that suit you better." Something sparked within her. The challenge ignited the determination that she'd been kindling both within herself and her relationship with Mark. Her heart pounded as she contemplated answering with overwhelming honesty about her journey, the trepidation intertwined with her newfound courage. "I've learned tentativeness isn't an option anymore," she responded, her voice stronger now. "It's time to trust myself." Jess's expression flickered, intrigue dancing in his eyes, but disbelief remained as well. "You know, you may think it's easy to confront the past, but it's like riding a wild horse. Takes skill, and sometimes a bit of luck." The analogy mirrored her internal struggle, the wild horse representing the fears and hesitations she fought hard to restrain. With Mark silently beside her, Ruth considered the parallels, fighting a wave of fears that wanted to throw her off balance. "Just like the foal," she finally added, nodding toward the curious creature that had drawn them all together just moments ago. "It's all about learning to find the right balance of trust and control." Mark's eyes shifted to Ruth, admiration brewing behind them. His presence seemed to solidify her resolve, whittling away at the remnants of doubt. If she could guide the foal back to safety, maybe she could also manage to guide herself through the storm Jess represented. Jess smiled faintly, but it did not escape Ruth that his gaze still harbored skepticism, an obstacle she needed to confront. "Just remember," he warned, a final challenge hanging in the air. "The races can be brutal. Do you really want to put yourself through that?" With a sudden clarity, Ruth shook off his words, feeling the momentum she had built with Mark. "Better to face the race than let it pass me by," she declared, an implicit invitation for Jess to see the strength that now surged within her. In that moment, she realized that no matter how insistent her past might be, she had the power to redefine her narrative. The foal nickered softly, as if sensing the monumental shift, drawing her attention yet again. Mark stepped forward, a renewed spark of determination lighting up his face. "How about we focus on this little one first, then take on the world?" Ruth laughed lightly at his eagerness, feeling the barriers between her and Mark start to dissolve. Yet Jess lingered, a looming reminder of challenges yet to come, doubts and apprehensions that would demand her newly forged confidence. As she reached for the foal again, she felt the exhilaration of possibility mixed with the anticipation of what Jess would say next. This wasn't over. Just as she had gained momentum, something gnawed at her. Was this confrontation about to unlock a truth she wasn't ready to face? Maybe you haven't fully moved on from your past yet, Jess mused, sensing her uncertainty, as if scenting fresh vulnerability in the air. Ruth's heart dropped, the challenge ringing in her ears. How far had she truly come when the shadows of yesterday still echoed so near? Would she have the courage to confront the painful truths lurking just outside the barn doors, waiting to catch her off guard when she least expected it? The air in the barn felt thick with tension, an unspoken challenge lingering between Ruth and Jess as the foal nuzzled into her hand, grounding her when everything else felt precarious. Jess's question echoed in her mind like a hammer to glass, each word striking her with an undeniable weight. Maybe you haven't fully moved on from your past yet. The ghost of her former self loomed large, threatening to shatter the resolve she had cultivated in recent days. Mark sensed her turmoil. He stepped closer, his presence a comforting barrier around Ruth's wavering confidence. "You're not that same rider, Jess," he spoke gently, a subtle defense. "Ruth's overcome obstacles, and she's ready to take on more." Yet Jess's piercing gaze didn't relent. "Courage isn't just about getting back on the horse, Ruth. It's about knowing what happened when you fell off." The statement landed hard, and Ruth felt her pulse quicken. The recollections of failures and missed opportunities bubbled just beneath the surface, threatening to overflow. It would be so easy to retreat into the safety of silence, to allow the doubt to swallow her, just as it had many times before. But deep down, she felt a flicker of defiance, a flicker that compelled her to confront these feelings for what they were. "I won't let my past define my future," she said, surprised by the strength of her own voice. It reverberated against the barn walls, buoyed by the resolve of her moment with Mark. There was an honesty in her tone that surprised even her. Jess regarded her with a blend of curiosity and skepticism. The air chilled as he weighed her words, playing them over in his mind like a seasoned professor assessing a thesis. "Then prove it," he finally said, locking eyes with her. "Show me you can face the race. Show me you're truly ready." Ruth's breath caught in her throat. It wasn't just an invitation, it was a challenge, a gauntlet thrown at her feet. Her heart raced, a cocktail of fear and excitement surging through her veins. The races Jess spoke of were more than just competitions. They were a battleground where vulnerability met ambition, where dreams could either ascend or crumble. "Fine," she replied, a quiet storm of determination rising within her. For the first time in a long time, she resolved to fight for her narrative. "I'll prepare. I want to compete." Mark smiled at her resolute declaration, his support an anchor reinforcing her newly uncovered courage. "We'll tackle this together," he said, squeezing her arm lightly. "One step at a time." The foal nickered again, a gentle reminder of the bond that was being forged in that very moment. A bond built not just on overcoming hardships, but on trust, learning, and growth. The previous weight of Jess's judgment began to shift as Ruth considered the possibilities before her. But Jess's eyes remained unreadable, masking the silent storm within him. "Remember what I said, Ruth. This isn't just about you anymore. It's about every moment you claim as yours. Don't lose sight of what you want when the pressure mounts." His words stirred something deep inside her, a creeping doubt that she hoped wouldn't resurface. As Ruth turned her focus back to the foal, she felt the palpable energy of ambition swell around her. She envisioned the future, one that intertwined their shared pursuits of passion, hers in competing and Mark's in supporting her journey. Yet, beneath the surface, a flicker of fear coiled tighter, a fear of the very potential she dared to unlock. What if everything unraveled? What if the past came crashing back like a wave she could neither outrun nor control? The weight of her unresolved history followed her, a constant whisper reminding her of failures that could rear their heads at the worst moments. "Let's get started then," she said finally, aware of the resolute tone she had adopted, but yet gripped by uncertainty. It was not enough to simply shout defiance into the depths of the barn. It required actionable steps, training, commitment, a willingness to be molded again. Mark stepped beside her, alight with encouragement. "Perhaps we can build a plan. Start working on your strengths and tackle those weaknesses head on. Together we can train the foal, and you can train yourself." Ruth felt a rush of gratitude for Mark's unwavering support. His enthusiasm breathed life into her scattered resolve. As they turned back to the foal, Ruth steadied her breath, feeling the stirrings of ambition and the daunting grip of fear coalesce into something else, an unyielding resolve, one that would beckon her to dive deeper than she had ever dared before, to confront the ghosts of her past living within her. She only hoped she was strong enough to stay on that wild horse of ambition, face the hurdles that approached, and not allow her history to dictate her future anymore. But as she turned to explain her plans to Mark, Jess's final words lingered in her mind. "This isn't just about you anymore." They stirred new uncertainty, a deep, unsettling question. How many others would be affected by the choices she made now? It was then that the barn door creaked, shadows forming an unexpected silhouette just beyond, distorting the already fragile moment. Who else was about to step into her life, and what revelation would they bring? Ruth's stomach dropped as the figure emerged from the shadows of the barn. The contrast between the muted warmth of the afternoon sunlight and the coolness enveloping the entrance heightened her sense of foreboding. She squinted, straining to make out the facial features of the newcomer. With each deliberate step, Ruth found her heartbeat sinking with the heavy weight of expectation that now filled the air. "Ruth, this is Jamie," Mark introduced, his voice steady despite the unease swirling around them. The newcomer was young, perhaps in her early 20s, clad in a weathered riding jacket and jeans, like a remnant of stories untold. Yet there was something in her posture that screamed confidence, terms of presence almost magnetic. "Hey," Jamie greeted brightly, yet beneath her cheerful facade, Ruth sensed a layer of scrutiny. "I heard you're planning to compete." Ruth nodded, unwilling to divulge the ball of anxiety knotted within her. She held onto the foal's soft mane, seeking its comfort. The air hung thick with the tension of potential competition, of expectations both spoken and unspoken. "Jess was just saying how much courage it takes," Jamie continued, her intent gaze unwavering. "But courage is more than a word. It's a choice, a series of choices that define who we are, and competing is just one of them." The words echoed the sentiment Jess had expressed, cutting through Ruth's resolve as if challenging her to reflect deeper. As Jamie spoke, Ruth felt exposed, each layer of her ambition strategized but untested. "What do you mean by that?" Ruth asked, trying to keep her voice calm, though a tremor betrayed her internal conflict. Jamie smiled knowingly, as if she could sense Ruth's vulnerability. "You'll soon face obstacles that'll want to make you retreat. It's not just about the physical race, but the emotional one too, confronting your limits and understanding your past." Ruth considered this. The truth resonated within her. She could hear echoes of her past failures, feel the sting of embarrassment in the depths of her memory. Her walls, so cautiously built, seemed to tremble again. "I get that," Ruth said slowly. "But what if my past problems leave me vulnerable? What if—" "You stumble again?" Jamie interjected gently, almost teasingly. "You're better equipped now, because you understand those failures." The clarity in Jamie's voice was refreshing, a welcome contrast to the doubts littering Ruth's mind. Mark's supportive presence urged Ruth to open up, to engage with the stranger who was now viewing her development from a perspective different from Jess's. Ruth felt a flicker of determination igniting again. Jamie leaned in slightly, her tone shifting to one of sincerity. "I once failed too. For a long while, I let that failure dictate my decisions, but eventually, I found a way to channel it. It changed everything for me." Ruth's curiosity sharpened. She wondered if Jamie's story mirrored hers, a tale filled with similar despair before emerging into empowerment. How had she bridged that gap, and what could Ruth learn from her? "Would you be willing to share how you did that?" Ruth inquired, imparting vulnerability into her voice. A smile crept across Jamie's face, brightening her previously serious expression. "Absolutely. But only if you promise to share your journey as well. After all, it's what we learn together that shapes our courage." Time hung suspended, the barn alive with the promise of growth. Ruth felt emboldened, no longer just an earnest competitor, but a student of both her craft and her fears. As the shadows began to elongate within the barn, marking the passage of time, Ruth grasped the significance of connections forged not merely in ambition, but in shared experiences. At that moment, surrounded by the scent of hay and the whinnies of horses, she embraced the weight of the challenge ahead, the knowledge that she wasn't alone in this journey. But just as she opened herself to the possibility of sharing, Jess's voice echoed again, a lingering warning in her mind about the stakes at play. She felt a sudden wave of uncertainty. What if vulnerability only opened her to deeper scrutiny? Ready or not, I guess I'll have to prove my courage soon, Ruth thought, both a challenge and a promise to herself. And yet, in that instant, another figure appeared just outside the barn. The distinctive silhouette of Jess, arms crossed as if waiting for an answer to a question only he knew existed. Ruth's heart raced anew. What would Jess say now that the air buzzed with burgeoning friendships and shared ambitions? Would he regard her effort with scorn, or acknowledge her willingness to face her truth? The weight of expectation loomed larger than ever, leaving Ruth suspended between her past and the future she yearned to claim. As Ruth stood in the barn, the atmosphere charged with unspoken tensions and the smell of hay, she resolved to confront the multitude of emotions swirling around her. The figures of both Jamie and Jess loomed indecisively in her mind, each representing contrasting paths, one forward, one tethered to the past. Ruth, Mark's voice cut through the tension, grounding her amidst the chaos. Whatever happens next, you've got this. You've built something here, and it's worth fighting for. His words resonated in her soul, fueling a flame of determination that had flickered for too long under the shadow of uncertainty. With newfound tenacity, Ruth turned her attention to Jamie. I want to learn everything you can teach me, she declared, the sincerity of her resolve shining through. But I also want to share how I'm pushing through my fears. This is about building one another up. Jamie's smile broadened, illuminating the tension that had enveloped them. That's the spirit. Courage is infectious, but so is vulnerability. Allowing our fears to breathe is the first vital step towards overcoming them. Ruth nodded, her heart racing in rhythm with the possibilities. She felt lighter, as though invisible weights were being swept away with the wind that swept through the barn door. This conversation would be a testament to the connection she'd been fostering, her budding relationship with Mark, and the unspoken promise to herself to flourish beyond past failures. But Jess's presence still loomed ominously in her periphery, a reminder that progress came with challenges. She caught his gaze, wondering if he saw her transformation or merely the remnants of the person she used to be. Are you ready to face your past and come to terms with it? Jess asked, his tone even, yet probing. Intrigue flickered in his eyes. You can't just jump into the next race without reconciling what's holding you back. Ruth inhaled sharply. No more hiding behind my fears, she replied, her voice steady. I plan to face the past. The doubts won't control me anymore. I'll embrace everything that comes with pursuing my passions. A flicker of respect shone in Jess's eyes, yet skepticism nestled behind it. Actions speak louder than words, Ruth. Just remember that. I understand, she declared, her tone resolute. And my actions will speak volumes. I'll not just compete. I will thrive. Mark's smile was broad and proud, fueling Ruth's fire even further. The support he offered was irrefutable proof of the growth she had achieved. He took a step forward, bridging the gap that once felt insurmountable between them. Let's start training. We can take it one step at a time together, he suggested, his sincerity wrapping around her like a protective shield. Yes, Ruth replied eagerly, excitement sparking within her. With each win we achieve here, big or small, we'll show everyone what true change looks like. As they moved toward the foal, the air grew lighter. Ruth's heart pulsed with a dance of adrenaline and purpose. The foal nudged her hand, hungry for connection and attention, just like Ruth herself, desperately seeking affirmation from the world around her. Let's make a plan, Jamie said, a spark of energy lighting her features. We'll involve the kids, do some community outreach, share your journey, and motivate others. We need to create a ripple effect. Ruth grinned. The conversation with Jamie felt like the perfect invitation to act on her aspirations. She would no longer dwell in hesitation, but would make her mark by rallying support from both young and old. "I love that idea," she gleamed, buoyed by the creative possibilities ahead. Yet amidst the excitement pulsing around her, Jess's voice echoed softly in her mind. Actions speak louder than words. The reminder of the pressure still lingered, a shadow that could return if she allowed it to take the wheel. With renewed focus, Ruth turned back to face Jess one more time. "I'll prove to you that I can face the challenges. My journey is just beginning, and I'm ready to take every step with intention." The warmth erupted within her, our light reflecting off every corner of her heart. This was transformation, authentic growth. As she rode the winds of change, the face of her journey remained firmly established before her, shimmering with the promise of resilience. With hearts aligned, they turned once more to the foal, ready to guide the young creature back to safety, signaling the beginning of their own journey together, a testament to the fruits of trust, courage, and the powerful bond of collective ambition. As the barn glowed with a newfound sense of community, Ruth felt complete. With every step ahead, she conquered her past and embraced her future, grateful for the twists and turns that had shaped her into the person she had become, an individual filled with purpose and the unshakable belief in her own ability to thrive. And now that the shadows had begun to clear, she knew she was ready to not just compete, but win. Leaving hesitation behind, she was poised to redefine what victory could look like, not only for herself, but for those around her. So, dear viewers, if you resonate with this tale of transformation, it's time to act. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss these exclusive emotional stories that fuel courage and growth. Leave a like now to ensure that the algorithm knows these journeys matter, and comment your thoughts on this epic conclusion. Finally, share instantly with at least 5 friends who need a reminder that they too can conquer their past and embrace their futures. Don't wait even one more second. This is the moment to show your support.